Hello, my name is Jess Hines, and I will be doing my self-introduction speech about my experience working at a homeless shelter. So on my first day, I pulled up and there was a police officer and a few men outside. The men were wearing dirty clothes and no shoes, and they were all arguing, so I had called my coworker to come out and get me and walk me inside. And I must say, I never thought that walking inside that building would change my life as much as it did. I was able to learn a lot about homelessness. I was able to develop skills and also create a deep connection with the homeless population. While my time at the shelter was short, it was very life-changing. It taught me so much about homelessness. I was able to develop skills to be able to work with this population, and it also opened my heart. Homelessness is a state of not having a home. This is something that I and many other people take for granted every day. But working at the shelter, I learned that being homeless is something way past that. The definition of homelessness, according to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD, is living in a place not meant for habitation, so outside, in a car, living in emergency shelter, living in transitional housing, or living in a temporary institution. This could be jail, hospital, or a rehab facility. Every individual or family that came into the shelter had their own story. We saw a lot of people that came in with a disability, whether that be an amputee or severe mental illness. Some of those folks did get disability checks, but they were not big enough to support them in housing, and some of them were too disabled to work but not disabled enough to get a check. We also saw a lot of folks that came in with bad backgrounds, so this would make it very hard for them to get a job or get housing. And to some, homelessness was just a lifestyle. A lot of the interactions I had with folks, they liked being homeless. They always felt like they were a misfit to society, so they just took themselves out of society and decided to be homeless. This is something that they weren't willing to change or give up, and they loved it. I did learn so much about homelessness while working at the shelter, but I was also able to develop great skills. The 3 skills or techniques that I learned was de-escalation, trauma-informed care, and motivational interviewing. De-escalation was definitely the skill that I used most common. We had a lot of intense situations that happened at the shelter, so being able to de-escalate that situation and pull out that intensity would make for a more calm environment. Trauma-informed care was the most important skill that I had. This is what trauma-informed care is recognizing that the person that you are helping has gone through trauma, and everybody who walked in through those doors had experienced some form of trauma. How you use that skill is create a safe space for them, so that they can regain and rebuild a sense of control. Motivational interviewing is a way to help somebody solve their own problems by showing empathy, using reflective listening and support. I use this technique to help guide folks into a more positive direction, but also allowing them to make that decision. The education and skill were so important to me, but I would say that the most important thing to me was all of the experiences that I had working at the shelter. I never thought in my life I would develop such connections at the shelter. I was able to watch 24 chronically homeless folks go from living under a bridge on the streets to living in permanent supportive housing. As you know, homelessness is a very, very dangerous lifestyle, and I didn't realize this, I suppose, until I lost a client to homelessness. And at that moment is when I realized how important this population was to me and how connected I was to them. And one of the last stories that I will share with you is I had a man that I worked with for 8 months. I developed a very strong trust connection with him. He was not willing to get help, but eventually I was able to connect him with a case manager, and he came into the shelter and said, "I've been homeless for 3 years and 7 months, and today I am getting an apartment because of you." It was a very emotional job, but it was a really great experience, and it led me to deciding to go back to school for behavioral science and nonprofit management, so I can gain more skills and knowledge and be a bigger part of moving people beyond homelessness.